gives me a chance to not only talk to those representatives at that elected level, but also to everyday people.
The Métis Nation of Alberta held its annual General Assembly over the weekend.
It takes both men and women to work together in order to have a healthy communities.
The men of Inukjuak are using culture and tradition in hopes of forging a new future for youth.
When we start looking at the truth and reconciliation calls to action, we see where we can contribute.
And bike tours in Winnipeg take traditional teachings to the trails.
Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. The City of Victoria made a historic move in the spirit of reconciliation this weekend.
Workers removed a statue of Sir John McDonald from the front steps of City Hall. APTN's Amber Bernard reports.
It took hours for workers to unbolt the statue before they were finally able to lift it from City Hall steps, as a divided crowd responded in songs of support and opposition. The mayor of Victoria says the city is committed to making reconciliation a part of the agenda, and that removing the statue is a step in the right direction.
We've accepted that reconciliation is about truth-telling, trust-building, relationship-building, and it's going to take decades.
Sir John McDonald was the first Prime Minister of Canada. He pushed the residential school system forward, and with that, 150,000 Indigenous children were removed from their homes and sent to state-run schools. Even today, there's a clear divide of opinions on the decision to remove the statue. But those in favor are happy to see it go.
I'm a Métis Cree from Alberta, and I've lived in Victoria for 25 years. And never once have I looked in the face of that statue.
Today is a sad day for Victoria, it's a sad day for British Columbia, and it's a sad day for Canada.
Others are upset and feel the city did not properly consult with the public.
I know there's a lot of people upset about it. I'm upset about it. He was obviously our country's first Prime Minister, and it's sad to see part of our history erased like this.
City officials say they're not erasing history, that they're using the removal of the statue as an opportunity to talk about Canada's dark past with Indigenous people.
I don't think I've had as many conversations about John McDonald, his role as Prime Minister, his role as the founder of the residential school system in the last few days as I have in my whole life. So it's actually the opposite of erasing history.
The city has placed the statue in storage and will hold public discussions soon about what should be done with it. Amber Bernard, APTN National News, Victoria.
Robots have invaded the Friendship Centre in Halifax, and this September they will be rolling into First Nations across Nova Scotia. Angel Moore explains this groundbreaking program for Indigenous children.
These robots do more than zoom around the floor. They teach coding and engineering. Children at the Mi'kmaq Friendship Centre test them out. And Grayson LeBlanc easily understands.
It basically looks like a bunch of tennis balls, all like stacked together. And it looks like the people, when they made this, it was probably very hard to make, and it probably took a very long time.
These little robots have a lot of people behind them. Christopher Gugu realized that science and technology education is lacking for Indigenous children. So he decided to fill that gap with Digital Mi'kmaq, an after-school program on every First Nation in Nova Scotia.
Low funding that the Mi'kmaq people get within the education system, so that's another step under that with the general population that we have to face.
This program will reach over 8,000 children on all First Nations and is hoped to eventually reach all children in the rest of the province. Gabrielle LeBlanc thinks the robots should be in all schools.
Oh yeah, definitely learning people to learn to program, and just it makes kids really creative, brings out their creative self. They can build whatever they want.
The program is off to a rolling start. Grayson is inspired to build robots to help others.
Do cool things like tricks And my favorite thing about robots are they're like a friend, except they charge and they take batteries. That's the hard thing.
Halifax has over 5,000 Indigenous children. Gugu wants to create a space in the new Friendship Centre so no one is left out.
To have that, not necessarily those skills that are of today, but the creativity that gets them into those the university programs and the college programs to be able to think innovatively.
He says this is the action of reconciliation, and now is the time for universities, industry, and government to support the action instead of just talking about it. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Halifax.
The Métis Nation of Alberta Annual General Assembly has wrapped up after 4 days, with members rejecting all 6 special resolutions that were proposed. APTN's Chris Stewart has the details.
We had a correction.
Wildfires was this year's host of the 90th Annual Métis Nation of Alberta General Assembly. Thousands of members from across the province gathered inside the Bold Centre to see old friends, make new ones, and celebrate Métis culture. On Friday, Brett Quintel taught a group of youth how to clean and fillet a fish.
Really well, yeah, they did. Going through bones and stuff like that with these electric knives the way they do today, it was really clean for them and fast, and some of them have never done it before, and you would never know. They did really well.
The Alberta Minister of Indigenous Affairs, Richard Feehan, says gatherings like this are important to the Métis people and for officials like himself.
It gives me a chance to not only talk to those representatives at that elected level, but also to everyday people, who stop me every 10 feet to tell me something. So it's been really a lot of fun that way.
There were 6 special resolutions voted on during the Assembly. One that garnered many comments was Special Resolution number 3. It was to bring the annual assembly back to Métis Crossing every 2nd year. Métis Crossing is considered the most prominent Métis gathering centre in Alberta. The people who spoke up here were against it.
And not everybody in our community has a $300,000 motorhome to roll into Métis Crossing and pay the daily fees to camp there.
I love going to the other regions and visiting the homelands of all our Métis across the province.
75% of the votes were required to pass a resolution.
375 people voted. 75% would have been 281 people. For the motion, 167. Against the motion, 208. I declare that defeated.
This was the last annual assembly before elections on September 18th. The elections will be held for local presidents and vice presidents, as well as for the president of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Audrey Portra has held the office since 1996. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Lac La Biche, Alberta.
Regina police have charged a man after a firework was shot at the Justice for Our Stolen Children camp over the weekend. At around 2 a.m. Sunday, police were called to Wascana Park in Regina after reports that a man got out of a car and shot a type of firework that discharges multiple flammable projectiles towards campers. He then drove off. 25-year-old Brent Holland of Yorkton, Saskatchewan was subsequently charged with assaults with a weapon, mischief, uttering threats, and arson with disregard for human life. He's set to appear in court on September 17th. Police say no one was injured. The Justice for Our Stolen Children camp was set up to draw attention to systemic injustice and racism in Canada.
The stage is set for another potential confrontation between pipeline demonstrators and police in BC. The court-ordered deadline to dismantle protest camps on Burnaby Mountain came and went on Sunday evening, but many campers are vowing to stay put. Many of them have been there for months, demonstrating against Kinder Morgan's Trans Mountain pipeline expansion.
Thousands of people living in northern and central British Columbia are closely watching the weather as wildfires threaten their homes. Nearly 600 fires are currently burning across the province, and 47 of them are close to homes or infrastructure. 1,600 residents of Fort St. James and 2,000 people living around West Quesnel have been told to be ready to leave at a moment's notice.
Crews in northeastern Ontario are making progress on the wildfires burning in that province. A fire near Key River known as Perry Sound 33 is holding at just over 11,000 hectares. Some residents in the area are returning to their homes. As of Sunday, there were 41 active fires still burning in the region. Time for a short break.
But first, here's tomorrow's weather. Starting off on the east coast, we've got 29 in St. John's, 24 in Fredericton. Up in northern Quebec, 15 in La Grande River, 13 in Inukjuak. Over in Labrador, 18 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, 29 in Quebec City, 30 in Montreal, 30 in Gaspé, 26 in Sarnia, 30 in Ottawa, 30 in Toronto, 32 in Big Charlotte Lake, 34 in Sioux Lookout, 27 over in Kapuskasing, 18 in Churchill, The Paws in 20, and Norway House 18, God's Lake 17, 19 in Barons River, 35 in Dauphin and Brandon, 21 in Winnipeg, 25 in Saskatoon and North Battleford, 24 in Regina, Swift Currents in at 27, up in Uranium City 23, but 21 in Buffalo Narrows, 24 in La Ronge. Welcome back. A young woman from a First Nation near Hope, British Columbia is missing. She was last seen almost a month ago and her family is searching desperately. Lori Hamlin has this story.
This is Shawnee Marita Inyali. She's from the Chawathil First Nation near Hope, British Columbia. She hasn't been seen in almost a month and she is officially missing.
She's never been gone anywhere for more than a week. She is homeless, but she always comes home, and that's here on Chawathil.
Shawnee's family hasn't seen her since Saturday, July 14th, and they're worried.
Especially with murdered and missing Indigenous women, you know, it's been happening all across the country for decades, you know, and her being gone almost a month is too long. It's too long. We've always seen her somewhere.
They organized a search and started looking at 6 a.m. Sunday morning, where Shawnee was known to walk and sometimes hitchhike.
She's a really friendly girl, and she talks to strangers, maybe too trusting, I think.
They covered almost 40 kilometers along sections of Highway 7 and down by the Fraser River.
People we didn't even know came from Vancouver and from Mission, and you know, that's a long way to travel and get up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning to come and join us on a search. It was really nice to see the mayor, come and support us. We had the RCMP.
People took pictures of anything that looked suspicious, and although no substantial evidence was found, the search did provide some level of comfort to Shawnee's family.
My intentions for this search were primarily just take it out of everybody's mind that she was passed away on the side of the road somewhere. And it gave me quite a bit of a relief today to not find that.
The RCMP's General Investigation Section is now handling Shawnee's file. If anyone has any information, please contact the Hope RCMP. Lori Hamlin, APTN National News, Hope.
A common refrain heard when addressing social issues facing Indigenous peoples is men need to be part of the solution. One Inuit organization in the Nunavik region of Quebec is taking that to heart. Tom Fenario has more.
Lunchtime at Charlie Inukjuak's house is about more than just eating. It's also an occasion for teaching.
That's skin from the beluga head.
Not just how to prepare muktuk or how to quickly sharpen a knife. It's about teaching his two boys and their friends how to be Inuit.
We have unique culture, we have a unique language, and even though they're going to school down south, I find really important for them to have their history, historical background within them.
Inukjuak isn't just concerned with showing his boys the way of his ancestors. Since 2001, he's been deeply involved in teaching many young men traditional Inuit knowledge through Inukjuak's Men's Association, known as UNAK. This past winter, UNAK was awarded an Arctic Inspiration Prize of $500,000, which will allow them to continue their work with Inuit youth, work that was born of a particularly difficult time in Inukjuak's recent past.
we had a very bad experience in Inukjuak where we lost young people from suicide, and we asked for a public meeting. And during public meeting, one of the ladies, or a few ladies, asked us what's going on with men. How come they're not involved in trying to solve the problem?
Inukjuak is an Inuit community of about 1,600, located in the subarctic region of Quebec known as Nunavik. With its rocky foothills leading to a river that flows into Hudson's Bay, Inukjuak's natural beauty is most evident in the summer. But the community also has an ugly side. In 2017, Inukjuak had about 1,200 criminal incidents, including nearly 300 assaults and 69 sexual assaults. For a small village, those numbers are astronomical.
Substance abuse, you know, it's hard because it's alive and well up north.
Sarah Lisa works in substance abuse prevention in Nunavik. Aside from alcohol, Lisa says cocaine and a new potent drug called shatter are being used frequently in Inukjuak. She says addiction issues became rampant in the 50s and 60s after historical traumas such as forced relocation, residential schools, and the RCMP slaughter of over 1,000 sled dogs.
The men, that was their livelihood. That's how they hunted. That's how they supported for their families and the community. After that had happened, many of the men were broken. Like, their role in the community and in their family was taken away. And with that, I think a lot of the alcoholism was born.
You can see here there's a nice driftwood that they picked up off the island.
As a longtime member of Unak, Tommy Palliser says Inuit are still healing from trauma. He believes in order to not fall into the same cycles of abuse, youth need guidance.
There's a gap between the generations, you know, that we have realized, you know, that there's a knowledge gap of traditional knowledge. You know, that's partly from, you know, the school system that's, you know, taking a lot of their time, you know, teaching a different culture, teaching a different subject.
This summer, 9 students are working with elders to build an umiak, a traditional boat used to transport large mammals after a hunt. In the case of the umiak, ropes are used to attach a frame rather than nails, so the sealskin exterior will not be pierced. The project goes beyond passing down traditional knowledge. It also teaches these young men carpentry. 24-year-old Alia Kuliak says he's enjoying his summer job here. He says it keeps him out of trouble that many of his peers fall into.
There's nothing to do in town. That's why they're more into the drugs. But Unak is helping a lot to avoid those things.
Meanwhile, Charlie and his boys are taking a boat out to Unak's youth camp. Perched up on the hill from a river that flows into Hudson's Bay, this youth camp is a refuge from the bustle of town. Adolescents from Inukjuak come here to learn how to hunt and fish. Over the course of an afternoon, the kids dry their own freshly caught Arctic char before enjoying the fruits of their labor. An elder is also brought in to speak to an attentive audience. Eventually, a game of baseball breaks out. And while it may not be a traditional Inuit game, in it, Inukjuak sees Inukjuak's future learning about hustle, fair play, and teamwork.
I've always been teach and told that the men are the head of the family since long time, but it takes both men and women to work together in order to have a healthy communities.
With Inukjuak and the Unak Association, the men of Inukjuak appear to have taken on that challenge. By looking to the ways of the past, they intend to forge a new future. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Inukjuak, Quebec.
It's time for another commercial break.
We've got more news to come, but first, here's the rest of Tuesday's weather forecast.
In northern Alberta, we got 25 at High Level and Peace River, 26 in Grand Prairie and Fort McMurray. Southern Alberta, 27 in Edmonton, 28 in Lethbridge, 32 in Medicine Hat. To the coast, 26 in Campbell River, 24 in Vancouver, 25 in Victoria and Tofino. 16 in Dease Lake, 23 in Fort Nelson, 26 in Fort St. John's, and 20 in Sandspit. 4 in Old Crow, 16 for Beaver Creek and Whitehorse and Watson Lake. Norman Wells in at 12, 22 in Fort Laird, 22 in Trout Lake as well. Tuck is in at 3 degrees, Colville Lake 5, and Paulatuk 1. 7 in Cambridge Bay, 14 in Baker Lake, 17 in Arviat, and 7 in Repulse Bay. Arctic Bay is 5, Clyde River 6, Cape Rose at 9, and Iqaluit 7.
Welcome back. 2 Indigenous cyclists in Winnipeg are hoping to get others on the land by getting riders out on the trail, literally. Brittany Hobson has that story.
Yeah, so we're going to start off here.
It's Sunday afternoon and these cyclists are gearing up for a 2-hour bike tour through parts of Winnipeg. On the agenda, a visit to the Louis Riel statue and his gravesite. That's because this tour is all about the history of the Manitoba Métis, and it's part of a program called Traditional Trails.
It's trying to get our people back and thinking about like our ownership and our occupancy of the space. And it's also to bring non-Indigenous people and into our spaces and learning our history.
Each ride focuses on a different theme in Indigenous history, including one where the group visited Indigenous murals and one led by women. Cyclists are led to various sites of significance around Winnipeg. Justin Bear-Larrivee is one of the co-founders of Traditional Trails. He says the tour acts as a way to honor the sacred sites and the stories that come with them.
Just being there and thinking about it is like the first step to kind of revitalizing that worldview and revitalizing those stories. So.
Adrian Alfonso is the other co-founder. Along with education, the duo hopes to promote health and fitness, something recommended through the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action.
When we start looking at the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action, we see where we can contribute and which ones work well for us. So Justin and I got together and we just wanted to see what we could do.
So what happened after the Battle of Seven Oaks?
At each stop, Larrivee provides some context to the importance of the site before the group moves on to the next trail. For first-time rider Kate Joberg, the prospect of being a part of something bigger brought her out to the tour.
They're combining this storytelling and for a lot of people, unearthing of important stories while getting us all out on our bikes and having a good time together. So it's also kind of a nice kind of community building event.
Traditional Trails is now wrapped up for the season, but Alfonso is already working on other projects, including a backpacking trip.
This is just our attempt at making sure we can contribute to solutions and hopefully become a model for the other provinces and other regions and all over Canada.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And kudos to all those riders who took part in that trail tour yesterday. 37 above in Winnipeg would have been a pretty hot one.
Pretty heroic.
That is heroic. And that's all the news we have for tonight. I'm Dennis Ward.
I'm Melissa Ridgen. We'll see you here tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you.